Welcome to the Property Tank Podcast. Timely insights, straight talk, giving you up-to-date insights on what's happening on property across Australia on the weekly. Doing a knockdown rebuild, dual occupancy or townhouse project, a Little Fish, we can manage that for you. So book a call with me today, scan the QR code or visit littlefishproperty.com.au. Also, make sure you join the Little Fish Network, Australia's #1 online community for property enthusiasts. Thousands of members and 100% free. So you're crazy if you don't get involved with that. All the links are below. Like, share, subscribe, hit the 5 stars on Spotify and Apple. Drop your questions in the YouTube comments below and follow me along on IG. Plenty of fresh content over there. Property stuff on the daily at Peter Kelly Official. All right, guys, let's get into it. We're talking weekly clearance rates and private sale rates across the country. So let's dial in and see what's actually happening here and now. A lot of these stats, they're month on month, but it's showing you these little trends over a short period of time and where the property market's heading. Because the people like us, you can see the trends and see where people are investing, see where the competition is, see where auction rates are high. Are we auction? Are we private treaty? And we're going to talk about what type of sale and dig deep into that and dig deep into why certain states might be a private sale and why they might be auction. So week ending 30th of March 2025, the total auctions in this week across the country were 2,879 inside this data set, and the private sales across the country were 5,093. So let's get into the particular states. So Victoria, 61% clearance rate. So we'll talk about the big two. The big two auction states are New South Wales and Victoria. Victoria in the last week sitting at a 61% clearance rate and New South Wales sitting at a 53% clearance rate. So reasonably strong, but definitely not on fire. Victoria had circa 1,250 auctions and New South Wales had about 1,200. So New South Wales had less and they had a lower clearance rate. And the private sales, Victoria had 1,300 odd, and New South Wales had 1,600 odd, so more. So more sales in New South Wales overall, but less going to auction and a lower clearance rate. So I'll get to the other states, but let's talk a little bit about auction, private sale. So the reason that vendors and their agents that they listen to will go to auction is because there's enough heat in the market, enough competition, where the agent is confident that they will get enough energy and enough competition to actually hold an auction. Because an auction is where people stand around, it's public, it's transparent, everyone can see what's going on, and you need people there, you need people competing, and you need people driving up that price. So unless the agent's confident that they're in a market and in a local market that can hold an auction, and see that competition to fuel the price, they won't risk going to auction. They will retreat to a private sale. So a private sale is where all marketing's completed, same as an auction. They're all marketed. Everything's on realestate.com, Domain, whatever your big portals are that you use, social medias, all those sorts of things. So very, very public, and the marketing is as strong as possible. But a private sale will be when they negotiate privately, people will inquire, people will speak to the agent, and it will be a bit more non-transparent. So public auction, the most transparent way to sell property. Private sale, you may not see your competitor. You may not understand who you are bidding against, and that can be an uncomfortable feeling to negotiate against. But that is auction versus private. And that brings me to another one, Bonnie, right? We've got the auction, we've got the private, and then we've got the off-market segment, the underbelly of the real estate market. So obviously the auction, the private, everything's advertised. It's just a different negotiation and final sales strategy at the end. When we go off-market, these are opportunities where vendors have maybe gone to a local agent and said, maybe I don't want to spend money on advertising. Maybe I don't want people to know my business. Can you sell it for me off market? So it's a process that doesn't cost the vendor much money, which is great. And then they need to go to an agent with a strong database, maybe strong contacts that they can go out to and maybe facilitate a deal off market. You know, when you've got good relationships with agents, that's where you might get that phone call or get that text to say, hey, I just met the vendor at XX address. They're looking to sell. They're looking to sell in this range. Is this of interest to you? So this is an advantage for buyers because you have less competition. You have a little bit more time to sort of figure out what you want to do. But obviously this can differ. Sometimes you get a 24-hour window to make a decision. Sometimes you get a little bit longer, but you get to do, you know, your due diligence and findings without, you know, noisy campaign, without lots of buyer interest, without potentially people making an offer before you. So, and there's different situations. Sometimes an agent might go out to their database, like I said. They might go out to multiple people off market. Which is the lines can get slightly blurred. What is off market? If an agent goes out to their database of 5,000, is that off market? Because that's a lot of people that know about the property. Ideally, the pure off market stuff is, hey, vendors met with the agent's called you and said, hey, I know you'll be interested in this, Mr. Kelly. You know, have you got a client for this, or are you interested in this property? And that's where, if it is of interest, you can potentially act just you versus the vendor and try and do a deal, mutually beneficial deal, just amongst yourself quietly and swiftly. And that's where potentially, you can get an opportunity without competing at these auctions that I'm talking about. So you've sort of got the three levels, and the three levels tell a bit of a tale. Like, I definitely think there's probably more off-market opportunities in a flatter market where vendors aren't confident of going to auction. Even private sale with all the marketing costs that can get very expensive. REA is not cheap. Aerial shots, photos, and even getting the property ready for sale. That takes time and energy, weekends doing gardens, maybe sprucing the property, these sorts of things. That's where a vendor can be just living in the property. Agent comes through, says, don't do anything, don't clean, don't do your garden, don't do whatever. I'll get a buyer through, and you can do a deal without the vendor having to go for too much trouble. And that might be a strategy that you implement before maybe going on a campaign for auction or private. It might be test the waters for a couple of weeks, see if we can get this done without spending money on marketing. So there you go. You sort of your three pathways to sale, I think, your main three. There's variations of those, of course, but your auction, your private, and then your off-market scenario.
You can talk, man.
I'll get rolling. All right, I went on a bit of a tangent there, but let's get back into the states. We've covered the two big boys, Victoria and New South Wales. Queensland, a clearance rate at the auctions of 42%. South Australia leading the whole country at 64%. Western Australia is 15%, Northern Territory is 40%, Australian Capital Territory is 46%, and Tasmania is 50%. Now, I wanted to roll through those because that's high-level data. Tasmania, 50%, wow. Northern Territory, 40%, a bit down. But let's dive into the context a little bit. What are the numbers in the private sales and obviously the auction? So Queensland at a 42% clearance rate. That's got 240 odd auction results there, and nearly 1,000 private sales. So as you can see, a high percentage going with the private sales. So, there's probably a few factors at play there. Queensland traditionally, probably a lot of private sales because they just haven't had the heat in the market. Obviously, a lot of heat in the market there in recent times. So they're probably pushing out into auctions a bit more. But also remember, you've got agents that have been doing it a long time up there and probably aren't used to auctions either. So it's probably going to take time, even if the market has got heat, for those agents to go, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, let's go to an auction, because it's not going to come that naturally to them. We've got South Australia, so nearly 100 auction results at 64%, with about 260 private sales. So much higher percentage auctions in South Australia than a Queensland, and they've got the highest clearance rate as well. So for me, that looks like South Australia's going along nicely, I suppose, in the macro of things. Hasn't got the numbers that the two big ones have got, the Victoria, the New South Wales, but a good percentage of auctions, which shows confidence in that marketplace, and a good clearance rate to go with it. We've got Western Australia, only saw 13 auctions. So not many auctions going on in Western Australia as well. They've got a 15% clearance rate. So those vendors and agents that have gone to auction, boom, boom, hasn't worked. Probably should have been private sales. And then they've got circa 500, 600 private sales. Northern Territory's had 5 auctions at a 40% clearance rate. So nearly half have sold at auction and about 24 private sales. So not a great deal of transactions happening up there. We've got Australians Capital Territory, the ACT, who's been pretty hot in recent times for the last handful of years. They had 65 auction results at, like I said, a clearance rate of just under 50%, and the private sales are about 134. Tasmania, beautiful Tasmania, 50% clearance rate. They had 2 auctions, 50%. One sold, one didn't. And then in about 180 private sales. So there you go. So just a bit of context around the clearance rates. I think it's definitely more valid in the New South Wales and Victorian markets because of that data size that we get to see. And then obviously in the smaller states that do less of it, I think it's less important. But also I will sort of asterisk all this with sometimes not all results get through to these. This is CoreLogic, a great institution that gives us a lot of our data and collects a lot of our data, but they don't always get through. So, even some of these clearance rate statistics, if CoreLogic doesn't know that a property didn't sell or passed in, sometimes they can be a little bit skewed. So there's a little bit of a range there. But there you go. That's what's happening across Australia. Obviously, some good information there on how to buy property and how to sell property based on the different strategies that you can use at sale. All right, guys. Well, that's it for the States. Some macro stuff there, but diving into looking at the auction, the private, and the off-market. So some lessons there for vendors and for buyers. A few different ways to sell and buy your property. So you've got to be onto all of them. Let's just touch on, be remiss of us not to talk about the RBA. RBA keeping rates on hold at that 4.1%, telling us that, let's not count on any rate cuts. That's what they do say. They try and keep our powder dry. That's fine. Obviously, we want to be watching inflation, employment, and all these sorts of numbers to see where they're headed. Hopefully inflation just keeps coming off, and unemployment, hopefully it doesn't go up too much, but if that does ease, inflation with unemployment, we probably will see maybe some activity, and hopefully another cut this year, Bonnie, another cut or two. But we'll see. That'll ease the pressure for everyone and their cost of living expenses now. Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks for your help, mate, and thanks for all your questions as always. Please, guys, like, share, subscribe. Get inside the network. Thousands of property investors and developers and speculators are in there helping each other every day. And that's free. So if you're not in there, you're crazy. Thank me later. Get across to Instagram. Lots of daily stuff happening on there. Dropping a lot of property stuff. You might even see what I'm up to on a weekend. All right, guys. Have a great week in property. See you next week.